Hey there folks, this is Sarah Siddiqui from Confessions of a Muslim Mamaholic. I've spent the last couple of days getting the material together for this new course that I'm offering on homeschooling and unschooling. It's a list of frequently asked questions that I'm asked a lot, and I decided I wanted to collect this material together and kind of give a little bit of an informational talk about what our lives are like as homeschoolers and as unschoolers. You know, I know that a lot of people have, they wonder what our day-to-day is like and how we, kind of manage to put it all together. And I wanted to give some time and dedicate some time to sort of creating that mental image of what our day-to-day is like. As I was kind of preparing the material, I noticed that there's one question that I get asked about frequently. And I thought maybe it would be nice to kind of give you all a little bit of a teaser and respond to that number one question, which is the famed socialization question. Do I worry that my children are going to be a little bit weird because they're homeschooled? And it's interesting because this is a question that to be honest, I've never really worried about it. It's never really been a concern of mine. And when I start to think about why it's never been a concern of mine, I think it boils down to two beliefs that I have. The first is, when I look at my children's education, a few years ago I was deciding where I wanted to send my children to school. And I had a list of, like all parents go into their school search with a list of, requirements that we had. And my number one requirement or my number one concern was, up until that point, my children had grown up in a very relaxed sort of learning environment. We as a family, we tried our best to foster their curiosity and their sense of wonder. We asked a lot of questions, and I wanted to make sure that wherever my children went to school, it wouldn't kill that natural curiosity and that natural sense of wonder that they had. For me, as a parent, that was our top priority in choosing where our children went to school. And that is the reason why ultimately we decided at that point in time that homeschooling was the best for us. Because when we looked around at the different options that we had, I didn't feel that there was any school environment that would continue to instill that sense of curiosity in our children. At least one that I could afford. So socialization was not really a concern that I had. It was not really something that was heaviest on my mind. With that being said, I don't want to say that it was not important for us. Just to backtrack a little bit, when we talk about socialization, we're talking about the ability that human beings have to adapt to different situations and to behave in an appropriate way according to cultural standards or societal norms. So definitely it is important for my husband and myself that our children know how to behave and know how to interact appropriately depending on who they're speaking with and who they're interacting with and the setting that they find themselves in. But in terms of their education, socialization is not the top priority that we have. It might sound silly to some, but actually their learning is our top priority. And how they go about learning and what that learning process looks like, that is actually our top priority. And that, for us, trumps socialization. So while socialization might be something that is important, for us, when we're looking at where we send our children to school, the learning process and how our children learn is a bigger piece to where we choose to send our children to school. The other reason why I felt like I never really worried about the socialization issue is that for me, when I look at most traditional schools, it seems almost silly to me to think that this is the place where my child is going to learn how to behave appropriately, where they're going to learn how to properly socialize. When you take a school that's age segregated, you take a classroom with 20 to 30 students who really have have been arbitrarily put together. They really have nothing more in common other than the fact that they happen to have been born within 365 days of one another. This is not really representative of what the real world is like. And if the idea of socialization is to get our children to perform and function well in the real world, schools, most traditional schools that are age segregated, are not really representative of what the real world is like. For me, when I think of how my children are going to be socialized, I take that onus of responsibility on myself. And I believe that children learn by being put in a variety of different situations. Whether they are homeschooled or not, or whether they, attend school or not, I believe that children are socialized for the most part outside of the classroom, in the real world, when they're interacting with people at the grocery store, at the doctor's office, anywhere they go on the playground, when they interact with friends of all different ages, not just those who are their peers, but when they interact with, the little ones and kids who are much older than them. By being by being exposed to a variety of different social situations, I believe that children are socialized more effectively. And when I look at most traditional schools, children are primarily surrounded by just their peer group. And, it's kind of like that old adage, the blind leading the blind, there is no sense of, there's a really good book, I'm going to detour a little bit. There's a really good book that I mentioned on the blog a lot called Hold On to Your Kids. And he talks about this concept of peer socialization and this idea that children are spending an increasing amount of time with their peers, as opposed to having a qualitative and a strong qualitative relationship with an adult figure in their life. And, historically, children would attach themselves to an adult caregiver. It might have been a parent, or it might have been a governess, or it might have been, just any adult figure in their life that they spent a good amount of time with. And that bond that they develop with that adult caused them to have this sort of, they look towards that adult to be their moral compass. And because children are spending an increasing amount of time with their peers, they've started to look to their peers to become their moral compass. And that's the reason why he argues that there's a lot of problems in society these days. And that's also the reason why, with the rise of bullying in schools and things of that nature, we have an increase of teenage suicide. Because children they don't have the tools needed to figure out how to maneuver through difficult situations and tests and trials. And it's that bond that they have, it's the bond with an adult that sort of is what guides children and gives them that inner moral compass. And it's that relationship with an adult figure, you could argue, that really plays the strongest hand in the socialization of that child, not their relationship with their peers and how much experience they have interacting with peers. So for me personally, I've never really worried about my children being socialized outside of school, because I don't really believe that schools are what socialize children. I believe that being out in the real world and being exposed to a variety of different social situations, that's where our children really learn how to behave appropriately according to whatever societal norms exist. I think that there's this myth that homeschoolers tend to stay in their homes surrounded by only their close family, only with very little exposure to the outside world, and with very little interaction with individuals other than their own parents. And for me personally, that couldn't be further from the truth of how we homeschool our children. Our children are out almost daily, interacting with a variety of different individuals. And beyond that, the relationship that I have with my children is what I feel is the strongest case for their socialization. The bond that I have with my children from the time that we spend together, that is, I believe, what will give them the moral compass and that value compass to determine what is appropriate behavior and what is inappropriate behavior. So anyways, that's a little bit about the socialization myth. If you are interested in the class, you want to learn a little bit more about it, feel free to visit my website, www.confessionsofAmuslimMamaholic.com. And with that, thank you for your time. I hope that you are no longer worried about the socialization issue with respect to homeschooling. Take care, and I hope you all have a good day. Bye-bye.